MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.
Welcome to this edition of EdTech Mondays Kenya. My name is Ian Ofula, and today we explore how podcasting is opening new doors in education. Podcasting, mostly known for personal storytelling and entertainment, is now transforming how children learn. Across Kenya and the continent, more learners are tuning in as audio content becomes a flexible, accessible, and powerful tool for education. So today we ask, how are educational podcasts being used to complement traditional teaching methods? What advantages do they offer compared to edtech tools? And how are Kenyan content creators designing learning experiences through audio, especially for early learners? Well, to help us understand these questions, we will spend some time with Kabrazen, a local podcast designed for foundational learning, which tells stories of African heroines that celebrates identity, history, and character formation. But before we explore how Kabrazen is using podcasting to complement traditional teaching methods, especially for young learners, let's start by defining some key terms that will help us better understand podcasting for learners. The first one is educational podcast. This refers to a podcast specifically designed to offer learning instructions. It is structured to support learning objectives across cognitive, emotional, or social domains. These can range from subject-specific episodes to story-based formats that promote curiosity and values formation like Kabrazen. Then we have audio-based learning, which refers to a pedagogical approach that uses audio content such as lectures, stories, or conversations to support knowledge learning. Research shows that audio learning can strengthen listening comprehension, especially in children developing language and literacy skills. Finally, we have culturally responsive pedagogy. This is an educational framework that uses learners' cultural identities, histories, and experiences as tools for teaching. Kabrazen embodies this by centering African stories and heroines, making learning relevant for young audiences. Now that we've broken down what education podcasting is, it's time to understand how it all comes to life. We spoke to Laura Ekumbo, one of the visionaries behind Kabrazen and the voice of Auntie Shishi. So how did Kabrazen come about?
So I am alongside Alea Kassam and Anne Mora, whom you'll see speak later, I believe.
Yeah.
We are co-founders of the Lamb Sisterhood, a story company that tells stories for African women to feel seen, heard, and beloved. I start there because Kabrazen is a creation out of that outfit.
And I see the unique angle that you took. Why African women, and why was this important?
We're not telling the truth about how freedom was won in this country. Women were a big part of winning freedom in this country. That's just one aspect of the contributions that women have made to the building of the world that we exist in right now. And those stories aren't being told. So we decided to tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what has been the immediate impact of telling these stories, especially to children?
They love them so much. I mean, to connect with these characters directly, because we reimagine these women as younger versions of themselves. So Mekatilili Wamenza, who fought against the colonialists during the Giriama uprising, she was 70 years old when she did that. And we reimagine her as a little girl so the children can connect with her.
And of course, these stories are being told in the context of education. So how do the two complement each other, Kabrazen and whatever children are learning in schools?
Yeah, these stories are rooted in fact. So I say reimagining because we spend a lot of time researching the women whose stories we tell. And then we reimagine them, like I mentioned, as young children. And we bring closer to home, or at least closer to the listener's ears, the child's ears, really complex subjects like colonialism in a way that they can understand it.
And of course, telling the complexities of the stories that you're talking about needs a lot of creativity to bring out the imagination, and that's where Auntie Shishi comes up. Mm-hmm. Why the name Auntie Shishi?
This idea of an auntie that you can play with, and the storytelling style that we use in the podcast is very call and response. It's interactive. That gives space for your little one to fall in love with an auntie.
And of course, a great part of your work is ensuring that the podcast or the content that you put out in Kabrazen reaches teachers, children, as well as parents. So how do you do this?
So we partner with different organizations to distribute. But because we are primarily creating IP, the Lamb Sisterhood, as an organization, Kabrazen must first belong with us. So the primary platform is our website, www.kabrazen.com. And then because podcasting has grown so tremendously, there are many apps that will pick up on, now it's a bit more technical, like your RSS feed, and pull it and place it in whatever applications that I might not want to advertise, say Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And then from there, it's in the hands of caregivers, it's in the hands of teachers, it's in the hands of learners, it's in the hands of adults who want to share it with the children in their lives. And although it's not formally been used in classrooms, we have heard anecdotal stories of teachers mentioning it or using it as a placeholder, like if they want to just go to the loo.
Yeah.
You can trust that you can leave the children listening to an episode of Kabrazen and they will listen to it over and over and over again and not get tired of singing Haya Haya Hayo.
Yeah. Well, Laura, or should I call you Auntie Shishi, to be unfair to let you go without kind of taking us through what Auntie Shishi is like. Okay, so I'm a student, I'm a pupil in your class. Take me through. I want to listen to Auntie Shishi right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ian, would you like to hear the story of Mekatilili Wamenza?
Yes, I would.
Can you say Mekatilili?
Mekatilili.
Me. Ka. Ti. Li. Wa. Men. Za. Perfect. Wonderful. That was excellent, Ian. Let's imagine the story of Mekatilili Wamenza. Now, Mekatilili Wamenza loved to sing and to dance. And do you know what song she loved to sing?
No, I don't.
The song her people sang, the song the Giriama people sang. She loved to sing and dance to those songs so much. What song do you like to sing to? Or dance to?
See, now I'll be failing in your class because I don't know what to say.
You don't dance?
No, I don't dance.
You don't sing?
No.
You don't listen to music?
I'm a very introverted person.
Can I teach you a song I like to sing here at Kabrazen?
Sure, let's go for it.
Haya, haya, hayo. Can you try that?
Haya, haya, hayo.
Wonderful. And then, haya, haya, hayo.
Haya, haya, hayo.
Wonderful. Now we put it together.
Okay.
Haya, haya, hayo. Haya, haya, hayo. One more time. Haya, haya, hayo. Haya, haya, hayo. And when these colorless frogs, I'm jumping ahead in the story, came to steal Mekatilili's people, whose songs she loved to sing and dance to, do you know what she said?
No.
I will dance, I will sing, I will not let you win. Haya, haya.
Hayo.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you for listening to that snippet of Mekatilili.
Those are some great insights there from Laura. But how does Kabrazen actually meet specific learning needs and goals? And how does it align with Kenya's curriculum? For that, we spoke to Alea Kassam, one of the co-creators and head writers at Kabrazen. Great. So Alea, thank you so much for making time for us. And as one of the co-creators as well as the head writer, I kind of feel like that is where creativity and imagination starts. So how do you design episodes to ensure that you're meeting learners' needs?
So really, when we think about Kabrazen, we're thinking about how do we create episodes that foster a sense of pride. To be Kabrazen is to be fully yourself, that spark imagination, that create a sense of curiosity, and also thinking around life skills. And so with each episode, we start with the woman whose story we want to tell. So for example, the story of Mekatilili Wamenza. We're really thinking about how can Mekatilili Wamenza's story provide an avenue for children to learn about themselves as well as history. Mekatilili's story is incredible in terms of her determination and her resilience and this life skill that whatever life brings to you, if you just take it one step at a time, you'll be able to get through.
So what's the creative process? Because we're looking at really young children and you're teaching them about women like Mekatilili Omenza who existed in a context where, you know, the colonial history is rather complex. How then do you break it down to a 4-year-old, for instance?
The first thing we do is we often crowdsource the stories. You know, we'll ask online, we'll ask people like, which brazen African women do you know of whose story you think hasn't been told? So that's the first step. It's a highly collaborative process. The second step is the 3 creators, myself, Laura, and Anne, will sit down and we'll have conversations around this woman's story. And then we go into research. So we work with researchers who, you know, develop very thick research packs around the woman's story, the history, the political and sociological context at that time. And then using that research, we now look at, okay, how do we want to tell her story? The stories are told as myths, so we combine fact with imagination.
And when it comes to the pick of the language and the words you're using in the episodes, what guides you to do that and what guides you to pick whatever you decide to?
So it's a long process. You know, we'll start with a draft and then we'll work towards, first we just want to understand what's the story we're telling. Does the story work? And then now we start looking at language, we start looking at structure. We use a lot of rhyme and rhythm and repetition because these are things that are really helpful for young learners. We think about what makes sense for them in this development stage in terms of their language, but how can we also stretch it a little bit, introduce them to new words, excite them about the idea of learning what this word means or what is a cumulonimbus cloud, you know, and give them a pathway into following their own curiosity.
Yeah, and obviously these episodes are taking place in the context of Kenya. Then how do you kind of ensure that it's in line with the current curriculum, which is CBC?
So actually, Cabrazen tells the stories of brazen African women from around the continent, not just Kenya. And our dream is for every African child to be able to listen to Cabrazen in whatever language they dream in. So what that means is that whilst we're not tied to curriculum, we're really thinking about how Cabrazen might offer the opportunity for learners to supplement perhaps what isn't present in the curriculum, so that it isn't tied to just Kenya, so that children all over the world can find joy and use out of these episodes.
And do you involve educators or learners, specialists in your content development? You know, you've talked about also from Kenya and beyond, actually.
Yeah, I mean, what's been interesting is that really the first experts have been children. We test the episodes out and we test them through live storytelling. And the children really will be very open and honest about what it is they connected with, what they like, what they don't like. So that becomes our first pathway. And then we do work with various experts, specifically because some episodes are themed. We have an episode on telling the story of Fatma and Mariam Al-Fihri, who founded the first ever university in the world. Did you know it was an African that was first university in the world? No, and that episode really talks about grief. Yeah. So, you know, we will work with what we call, experts based on what the episode needs. We've also found teachers have been really generous with their feedback. This is a very iterative process.
Yeah. You've kind of touched on the next question, because I was going to ask you on collaboration, which is one of the things that we are very passionate about here at EdTech Mondays, because to ensure that education and technology is actually working, you just can't be an island by yourself, say as Cabrazen. So who else do you work with? Yeah,
it's a highly collaborative process. It's a very high quality podcast, which is expensive to make and requires, we have a fantastic team behind it. In terms of, getting the podcast out, Aga Khan Foundation have been using it in their community libraries. They've got over 100 community libraries in which it's present. And what they do also is that they have a program called Learning Through Play. And so often these episodes then are used as a way to create activities around learning or, self-development, things like that.
And one of the things about such kind of content is that feedback is immediate. So if you're not doing it right, then you literally get it to your face. Yeah. So what kind of feedback have you been getting?
I think what's been really fascinating is the memorability of the stories, and that the stories are hitting the heart. That's been something that is showing us that Cabrazen has a place in learners' lives and in caregivers' lives. There's a hunger for more. The other interesting thing is the episodes are in English and Kiswahili. And it's been really interesting the ways in which Kiswahili is embraced even deeply. I mean, it makes sense, right? This is the language that is closest to us. And we're hoping that as more and more teachers and caregivers embrace Cabrazen, that they will offer us feedback on how we can make it better. So that's a call.
Nice. Designing meaningful content is only half of the story. The real impact is measured in homes where parents and children connect through these stories, one episode at a time. Well, to truly understand how Cabrazen is connecting and relating with its audience, we spoke with the people who listen the most, parents. So we're here with you because your children and yourself kind of get immersed in Cabrazen. How did that come about?
As a mother, bring up my children. I have 3 children, 14, 12, and 9. I had always looked for content for them, not just in terms of the storybooks that they are reading, but even the content that they consume online. And so when Alia told me that they were launching a children's podcast, I was really excited about it.
What kind of impact have you seen on the kids? Are they how to what extent are they relating, and to what extent is it complementing their schoolwork?
I think the fact that they are getting to know history, Africa's history from an audio perspective, I think that's profound, because now it becomes a point of conversation. So then what I have seen in my children is that when they are now having conversations with their friends, they're very knowledgeable. They're like woke. So the other children they're talking about the cartoons they're watching or the games that they're playing, but my kids are sort of having deeper conversations, and that really, for me, it's a moment of pride to see that.
And speaking to the creators of Cabrazen, they've definitely come about the fact that there might be hesitation from some parents that children do not necessarily learn from audio. They need a bit of visual aid alongside what they're learning. What do you think of this?
I think it depends on the setting. Because if you think about it, yes, visual does appeal more, because there's what they watch and what they listen, and so that combined is very effective for children. But I also think that we downplay the effect of audio on especially children, because then what happens is that with audio, there's a lot more imagination that is left to them. So they need to be a lot more imaginative about how did Mekatilili look, what was she like, and that aspect of imagination is something that we need to keep inculcating in our children. We, unfortunately, because of them being stimulated too much visually, they lose that aspect of imagination. That they, and you see, that's where creativity comes from. Yeah. When you imagine, you create. And so what we're doing is that by exposing children too much to visual content, we are sort of robbing them of that gift of imagination. Yeah. Yes. And there's so much that we can do with, that children can be able to do with audio, and it's as entertaining as video.
Now that we've heard from the parents on how Cabrazen is sparking curiosity and deep conversations at home, we'd like to hear from the young listeners themselves on what they love the most about the podcast and what they're learning along the way. I know Cabrazen tells stories about strong women and strong girls as well. Did you see yourself in that space? What did you feel motivated?
Honestly, I felt like they were empowering us, because most of the time when I put Cabrazen, I usually scroll and I never find, like, they talk about male heroes and stuff like that. They usually talk like Angelique Kidjo. Honestly, when I heard their stories, I was so uplifted by how they used to bring themselves out with their character.
What do you want to be, and how does that how does that inspire you to become who you want to be?
Well, for starters, I wanted to become an artist, but then when I decided my options on music and art, I equalized them. Then when I had the story for Angelique Kidjo, that's when I was like, wow, she was really out there. And so I chose music because the way she expressed herself through her dances and her voice, it really inspired me to go with music.
Well, it's clear that learners are not just listening, they are connecting, imagining, and actually growing. But even with all this evidence, a few common myths still stand in the way. Here are some of the most common misconceptions about podcasting for children and the surprising truths about them. The first myth is that podcasts are only for adults.
While many popular podcasts target adults, there's a growing library of high-quality, age-appropriate content for children. Education podcasts like Cabrazen are specifically designed to engage young minds with storytelling, values, and critical thinking.
Another myth is that children only need visuals to learn, while audio alone isn't effective.
Audio stimulates imagination and builds strong listening and language skills. In fact, early childhood experts have emphasized the value of oral storytelling and listening activities in developing literacy and comprehension.
The third myth is that accessing podcasts is too technical or expensive.
Podcasts are among the most accessible digital media. They require low data, can be downloaded for offline use, and are playable on basic smartphones and shared devices, making them ideal for low resource settings.
The final myth is that children do not have the attention span to listen to a 20 to 30-minute podcast.
Research conducted by Cabrazen actually indicates that 4-year-olds have quite the attention span. Listening for them may be supported by activity stacking. That is, they could be listening as they draw or eat.
So now that we've cleared the air and debunked some myths, the next question is, how do you actually bring podcasting into your learning space? Whether you're a teacher or a parent, getting started is actually easier than you think. Let's go back to our friends at Cabrazen for some simple, practical steps. I spoke to Anne Mora, another co-creator and creative director. Well, and this is one of my favorite segments because people watching us will learn how to, and in this case, you want to learn how to Cabrazen. So a teacher back at home is probably wondering, how do I integrate this in the learning experience of students? What are some of the things I should look out for?
If you're a teacher who's looking for ways to use the audio, allow the children to listen while maybe doing an activity, maybe they're coloring. If you're also looking for things to connect with your teaching, all the episodes are really values-based. They're very heavily researched, and they're rooted in real facts. So if there's something in your curriculum or there's a subject that you're trying to explore, for example, if you want to talk about the history of Kenya, play the Mekatilili Wamenza episode, because that explains how she led the Giriama uprising back in the early 1900s. So you can use the episodes, whether it's specifically as a topic or a theme, or you can just kind of use it as a tool. It's meant to be a bit fun, so you can use it as a way to take a break while they're still learning.
What about back home?
I think as a parent and you're listening at home, find an opportunity that makes sense for you, that aligns with your schedule, that also aligns with how your child prefers to listen.
Because there's teachers who would be using audio as a learning tool for the first time.
Yes.
What kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, number one, I'd say is, remember when you're teaching, you're using audio. You speak. Children already know how to listen. So if you're looking at audio as a medium, don't think of it as a brand new tool. Think of it as a supplement to tools you already have in your existence. What it is storytelling. So you can play the audio for your children in class. It gives you 20 to 30 minutes of kind of focused listening time where they could be coloring or playing or doing something else. And you have the opportunity to set up either specific questions before listening to the episode, or to open discussions for after listening to the episode.
So, Maura, I want to listen to one of the episodes of Cabrazen today. Where do I go?
www.cabrazen.com or anywhere where podcasts are available. All the episodes are completely free. They're completely free for parents, caregivers, available online at any time.
As we wrap up, we hope today's episode has inspired you to explore podcasting as a tool for learning, whether at home, in the classroom, or anywhere in between. Well, that's it for this edition of EdTech Mondays Kenya. Remember to follow us on social media using the hashtag EdTech Mondays to share your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Special thanks to our sign language interpreter, Miss Rose Omolo. My name is Ian Wafula. Until next time, goodbye.
EdTech Mondays Kenya is supported by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in partnership with EdTech East Africa.